The moment I saw him, my heart stopped beating. We were at a dog shelter. Ever since I arrived there, I have felt him watching. A massive black dog, crouched in the shadows, not barking, not blinking, only staring at me, as if we were not strangers. And somehow, I couldn't look away. "I think I like him," I murmured, moving closer. The shelter owner's eyes narrowed. "You sure? That one is new. Showed up during last night's storm out of nowhere. It's more beast than a dog." I stepped inside the kennel and stopped breathing. He was huge. His head reached my collarbone, but his eyes, silver, seemed too deep, too dark, and knowing. I reached out my hand and gently touched his head. "Want to come home, big boy?" I asked, almost whispering. He stared, then nodded. Just like that, I knew. He wasn't just some storm-struck stray, but so much more. And nothing was ever going to be the same again. Just earlier that day, I had no idea who or what I had let into my life. When my parents died, I thought my life was over. While I received a lot of money and even some property in the inheritance, I couldn't access it. At least not right away. You see, I'm only 17, and I'm stuck with my wicked step-grandmother, Cece. She may be my last surviving relative, but she's evil to the core. And until I turn 18, she's the holder of my trust. Cece has never liked me. She came into our lives a few years after my grandmother died. I barely remember my bio-grandma, but I have many happy feelings associated with her. For most of my life, I've only known Cece as any sort of grandmotherly figure. She hated me from the get-go. I think she saw me as competition because I wasn't just the last of our line. But from what everyone has said, I look just like my bio-grandma. She never made a secret of how much she hated me, but my grandfather kept her in check. When he passed, he left some property and some cash to her, but mostly it went to my parents and me. We kept up some contact with her at Grandpa's behest. But to be honest, I just never liked her. Even my parents were frosty with her, and they were two of the warmest people I knew. Their passing was sudden. A hit and run late at night on the back road coming home. The police haven't been able to find the people responsible, and Cece isn't in a hurry to find out. I've pressed the police as much as possible, but they don't take me very seriously. Thankfully, Cece and I rarely have to see each other. I still live at my parents' old house, and she still lives at Grandpa's vacation home. But just because we don't see each other regularly doesn't mean she isn't a regular pain in my neck. Though she's tried to play a few games with me to take my rightful inheritance away, my parents' lawyers are pretty awesome. So I've managed to keep my property, assets, and income safe. At least for now. Unfortunately, that just spurred her on to try to make every waking moment of my life terrible. From hosting get-togethers at my house, to listing it on private rentals, signing me up for glitter bombs, and even crazy things I can't prove. Like paying someone to slash my tires, or the time I woke up with piles of dog crap everywhere. She has tried everything. While I could sue for emancipation, I will turn 18 in less than a year. My lawyers have said it would probably take me longer to sue and win than I would just to wait it out. While I don't like it, I do trust my lawyers. I can deal with Cece till then. Anyway, I guess that's not why you're here, is it? I just wanted to give some background on how exactly my life went from bad to worse to great to bad again. It all started a few weeks ago. That's when my tires were mysteriously flat. Again. I had installed security cameras, but they couldn't catch much. Whoever did it seemed to know right where to go to avoid them. I contacted my lawyer, who asked me to email him with whatever footage I did have. He also contacted the police for me, which I appreciated. I had midterms to study for and didn't want to deal with the headache of going back and forth with the same police department that hadn't solved my parents' hit-and-run case yet. When I got to school late, thanks to having to catch a rideshare rather than drive myself, my best friend Lucinda immediately asked me questions. "What happened? Why are you late? Why didn't you text me? Didn't you see my messages? Are you okay?" Our teacher, Mr. Blanche, didn't look happy with her outburst, no matter how quietly she whispered. He glared at us and rapped his knuckles on his desk to get our attention. "Miss Lane, I appreciate you finally showing up. Do you have?" He seemed to catch himself before he could finish the question. It was what he asked every student, whether they were 5 seconds or 15 minutes late. "Do you have a note from your parents?" He blushed, cleared his throat, and returned to the driest lecture on history. He really knew how to suck the fun out of even the most interesting lessons, and today was no different. Making sure my phone was completely silent, I whipped it out under my desk and hurriedly went to my messages. I saw I had 2 missed calls, about a dozen texts, and even a few social media messages, all from Lucy. Well, that explains why she was so worried. I quickly scrolled through her messages. They were basically all variants of, "Are you okay? Is the old hag giving you trouble?" And, "You better answer or I'm ditching to check on you." I sent her a quick text telling her what happened. I woke up with slashed tires, no real evidence, a chat with my lawyer, and an unpleasant ride share to school. Almost the moment I sent it, I heard her cluck her tongue and sigh. Little dots told me that she was already responding. Get more cameras. Inwardly, I groaned. I already had enough cameras. I could make a surveillance team jealous. We went back and forth, the same old argument we'd been having since the first time I installed cameras. Lucy was as well-meaning as she was hot-tempered. She started snorting and grumbling. I couldn't deal with her bad attitude today and decided to stop it before it started. "Lucy, I love you and you're a great friend. But let's not argue today. I'm already dealing with a lot." I looked at her and smiled. She did the same. Then, looking like she had a brilliant idea, she texted me again. "Get a dog." Now there's an idea. I always wanted a dog. We'd had one forever ago when I was just a kid. But when Talbert died, we just hadn't really bothered to get another one. Lucy clearly must have picked up on my willingness, because she messaged me again. "We can pick one out together this weekend." It didn't take much to sway me, I guess. I sent her a thumbs up just before Mr. Blanche passed out our work. He was like the only teacher who still passed out papers like this. Most of our teachers had gone to digital work, but he was as stuck in the past as his lessons. The rest of the day flew by, and I didn't think much about my car or Cece. Lunch with Lucy was fun enough, and I got to catch up with Sarah and Pau, Eagle, which was cool. But when the final bell rang, all my stress came crashing back down. I was the only one of my friends with a car and wasn't signed up to ride the bus. Technically, my house was within walking distance, but I didn't feel like taking a 10-mile stroll right now. I was about to pull up the rideshare app on my phone when Lucy stopped me. "Mom's picking me up today. I bet she won't mind dropping you off." I wasn't so sure. Lucy and I live on opposite sides of town. The trip from school to my house wasn't bad, but it was at least a 20-minute drive from my house to hers. I knew Mrs. Juarez was a sweet lady, but I didn't want to take advantage. I appreciate it, but I'd rather catch a rideshare. I just kind of want some time to think. Lucy pulled a face, and I knew she disapproved. "We're supposed to hang out this weekend, right? I have to worry about getting my tires fixed tonight." I wasn't lying, really. I was absolutely going to get the tires fixed tonight. But really, and I didn't feel like admitting it yet, I wanted some time to browse puppies online. Thankfully, Lucy didn't have much time to argue. I quickly booked my ride and showed it to her. Just as I was shrugging, her mom pulled up and honked. As annoyed as Lucy was, she still gave me a big hug. "Promise no backing out on Saturday?" I smiled and waved to her as her mom honked again. Promise. Something about a big guard dog was really appealing, especially since Cece wouldn't know how to warn any potential renters about it. Really, I just wanted a big cuddle monster to keep me company. The house was big and lonely. My knowledge of dogs was pretty limited, so I wanted to make sure I got a good breed for myself. One that was big and scary to look at, but a total sweetheart. One that would bark when someone was outside, but not 247. A breed that was easy to train and could stand me being gone for school. By the time my ride pulled up, I was feeling excited. I had decided I wanted a big dog. A breed that was smart, easy to train, loyal, and lovable. Something like a pit bull, cane corso, ridgeback, heck, maybe even a Great Dane. My trust paid me a monthly allowance and covered my bills, so I knew it would be easy enough to cover the cost of a dog, even a large one. I looked up a few breeders around and found a couple that had puppies for sale. They weren't cheap, for sure, but I had personal savings I could dip into without bothering the trust or Cece. Once I was home, I cooked myself something quick to eat. It was still strange to make dinner just for me. When Mom was here, we would often cook together, Sometimes I would even cook for our little family. The first couple of weeks, it was like I couldn't make a meal small enough just for me. It was getting easier, but I still expected her to be there, handing me a lid or suggesting more pepper. I took out some pre-made pizza dough and rolled it out. I added sauce, leaving enough space for the outer crust to form. Then I added a blend of Parmesan, Asiago, goat, and cheddar cheese. I cut thick chunks of mozzarella for the toppings, tossed on some jarred mushrooms, and thinly sliced summer sausage. For an extra little razzle-dazzle, I gently rolled and crushed sweet basil, but that would have to wait until after the rest had cooked. It was so much better added fresh. While it baked, I looked around the house. Every day still hurts, but it was getting easier to deal with. It was these quiet moments that struck me. Maybe I should have let Mrs. Juarez drive me home. The thought of Lucy spending the night wasn't a bad one. I texted her and asked if she wanted to come home with me after school tomorrow so she could stay the night before we went the puppy shopping. It didn't take her long to respond in the affirmative. That's when I noticed a text from Cece. Ugh. For a moment, my finger hovered over it. I wasn't sure I wanted her to know that I'd read it already, but sometimes dealing with the bad was like ripping off a Band-Aid. It was better to just get it over with quickly. Good afternoon, Jane. How was your day? I hope you don't have plans for tomorrow. I'll need you to greet the family who will be staying for the weekend. I rolled my eyes. She didn't need me to be there at all, and she definitely wasn't asking permission. I knew it in my bones that she was just trying to goad me into admitting that my tires were slashed. For a moment, I almost rose to the bait. I wanted to tell her that the car was perfect, and I planned on having my friend over for the weekend while we got my new dog settled in. But wouldn't that be doing precisely what she wanted? As the smell of pizza began to waft through the air, I decided to call up the same tire shop I'd gone to last time. They were fast, friendly, and cheap. Thankfully, they had a delivery service and didn't mind coming over to take care of the issue. I ordered the tires, and they said they would fit me in at the end of the day, just a couple of hours away, given that they stayed open until 7. Luck only had a part to play, given that Lucy's uncle owned the shop. They always seemed to be able to fit me in. I suppose it didn't hurt that I always insisted on tipping, too. Not for the first time, I padded over to the other door in the kitchen. The kitchen was large and open, with plenty of cabinet space and 2 ovens. It was truly a chef's paradise, which isn't surprising, given my mother was a food fanatic. It had 3 doors. One that led to it from the rest of the house, one that led to the backyard, and one that led to the garage. I knew I should have cleaned the garage out already, but it had only been a couple of months since my parents died. I had barely gotten their affairs settled. Everyone always seems to think that once someone dies, it's done, and you can just put your life on a rail and zoom forward. I tried, really. After my parents were buried, I went out to the garage. I told myself I needed to tackle the mountain of boxes, projects, tools, and memories. I still hadn't done a single box. It was too much, still. If I could even just move enough stuff to park my car. The real issue wasn't just Dad's projects or Mom's scrapbooking. It was their cars. Dad and Mom each had their car, one they shared when they went on dates, and then my car. Their date car had been completely ruined in the accident. I didn't have the heart to move either of their personal vehicle, not yet. Especially not to make room for my own. At least with the cars locked away in the garage, I didn't have to look at them. Before I could open the door, the smell of burning pizza reached my nose. I quickly pulled the pizza out and was happy that it had only turned the cheese medium brown, my personal favorite way to have it. I pushed the thoughts of my parents and their belongings out of my mind and added the basil to my slice. It was delicious, but it couldn't replace my parents. I decided to quit wallowing and put on something to watch. Honestly, it was hard to be sad while watching scary movies. That may be why I've been binge-watching them lately. It was easy to turn my brain off and zone out while the people on screen screamed. At least, until my phone rang. It was Lucy's uncle who had let me know he was there. Even though it was annoying to have the tires replaced again, I liked watching Uncle Jaime and his crew work. They had these portable jacks that were pretty fun to see in action. Besides, Jamie was a good guy. We chatted while his boys changed the tires, mostly about little things, but also about the puppy. Lucy's family was quick to talk, and it really shouldn't have surprised me that word had already spread down the grapevine. When I told him the breeds I was considering, he laughed. "You sure you can handle a big dog? Why not a Chihuahua or a Wiener dog?" Talking to Jaime was like having an uncle of my own. I told him I wanted a dog to cuddle and protect, and he just shook his head. It made sense, I suppose. Something I probably haven't mentioned is that I'm pretty short. I'm only 5'2", and the thought of seeing me walk some monstrosity of a dog would be pretty funny, especially to a gruff old guy like Jamie. Once they got the tires replaced, I gave him double what he charged. He was a classy guy for being as gruff as he was, and he just folded the bills and tucked them in his wallet. In fairness, he did know where I lived if I shortchanged him. He patted the hood of my car, told me to try locking it up in the garage, and left with a wave and a smile. Feeling a little relieved, I went back inside to finish up for the night. Finished the movie, the pizza, my homework, everything. I wanted to be able to zoom through tomorrow so I could enjoy a weekend with Lucy and my future puppy. "What about this one?" Lucy pointed toward a perky puppy playing tug-of-war with her shoelaces. I wasn't so sure. What seemed like a cute and playful attitude now would probably end up as chewed shoes and ripped pillows while I was at school. I don't know. I didn't have the heart to tell her how much I disagreed with her choices. I wanted a chill dog that I could cuddle with, something that could be my pal and keep me calm. Not a tornado I'd constantly have to clean up after. The cane corsos we'd been looking at were all super cute, but none of them really stuck out to me. Only a few weren't claimed, and everyone else pursuing the puppies seemed way more interested than I was. I watched the pack of short-haired tan puppies run around the large kennel. It was strange. When I arranged to come and meet the puppies, I had a really good feeling. But now that I was here, I felt a little let down. I didn't want to rush and pick a puppy just because they were cute. I wanted a dog I could keep forever. Lucy huffed and walked to the other end of the large enclosure. There goes her attitude. I watched as she scooped up the rowdiest puppy and lavished it with kisses. I couldn't help but laugh and shake my head. But as I watched, I suddenly got the overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. I turned around and didn't see anyone. I didn't see anything. I stared for a moment longer, and there, in the shadows, I could just make out the outline of a black dog. Something about the way it sat perfectly still intrigued me. He was definitely much calmer than the other puppies. He wasn't inside this kennel, but in a connected one. With his shaggy fur, he certainly didn't look like the other dogs. Heck, nothing about him was like the other dogs. He was a mass of fluffy black fur. He had tan and brown markings around the edges of his paws, cheeks, and eyebrows. He had a white snout and chin, and white paws. He even had a little tuft of white on his chest. He didn't move as I approached, but I could see his jewel-bright silver eyes tracking my every move. "Hey there!" I waved awkwardly. It had been a while since I'd had a dog, and Lucy's pack of wild mutts was hardly good practice for the kind of dog I wanted. "Are you friendly?" Tentatively, I held my hand out toward the fencing. The dog sniffed at my hand. With a serious expression on his face, he lifted his own paw up to the fence. "Oh, do you know tricks?" This was both exciting and disappointing. I was happy to know that this dog was friendly, smart, and trained, but undoubtedly, that meant that he wasn't for sale. "You like that one, huh?" I turned and saw the dog breeder. He was eyeing the dog strangely and rubbing his round chin. "That's some kind of mutt that wandered up the last big storm we had. Didn't have the heart to turn him away, but I don't have a use for him." A joy I didn't quite understand filled me. It was like I was feeling happiness beyond my own. My heart swooped, and I got a rush of excitement. For a moment, I could only think of running in an open field. The idea was clear: freedom. It was odd given I was about to take on more responsibility, but I didn't mind the analogy. If everything went well, this little dude would be on my journey to freedom and happiness. The man walked over to the door that connected the two kennels. "I can let you in there to tell him hello, but he can't come out here with the pups. You'd have to get him shots and all. I ain't made a trip out to the vet with him yet. Obviously, this one doesn't come with papers." I entered the enclosure, and the dog stood up. I hadn't realized how huge he was. His face came up to my chest, and if he had stood on his hind legs, I had no doubt he'd tower over me. I did want a guard dog that would be scary to look at. A little nervous, I reached out and stroked his soft fur. I could feel twigs and bits of debris here and there. As I pet him, he seemed to enjoy it, begrudgingly. "You like that boy, huh? Would you want to come home with me?" Maybe my grief and stress finally drove me over the edge, because I think he nodded at me. Before I had time to process what I saw, Lucy approached the kennel door. That's not a puppy. That's a mutt." Again, I was struck by the dog's human-like reaction. He seemed to raise an eyebrow as he reacted with what certainly sounded like disapproval. "Lucy!" I scratched the dog under his chin, and he nuzzled me just a little. "I like him. He's calm." The man laughed. "Calm? Sure is. You know, he ain't purebred. Ain't even mine, really. I can let him go for $50. That'll cover a harness that'll fit him, a leather strap leash, and a starter pack of kibble." He looked at me, and his eyes twinkled. I knew that look. It was the look someone got when they thought they were really getting a good one over on you. Oh well, I'd have paid more anyway. I stuck my arm out and shook his hand. He seemed surprised and couldn't help but chuckle a little. "You wait right here, and I'll be back." In less than 15 minutes, we had the dog, about 30 pounds of food, a couple of toys, and the sturdiest harness and leash I'd ever seen loaded up in my hatchback. Lucy still lamented that I got a grown-up dog rather than a cute puppy, but she had to concede that he was much more intimidating than even a big Cane Corso pup. We had a bit of a drive ahead of us to get back to my house, which gave us plenty of time to talk. Lucy's favorite subject today was the absolute crapshoot she'd caused yesterday. B-days were half-days, so we beat the would-be vacationers to my house. Naturally, Lucy had been pretty pissed, even more so than me. She stormed and raged about it for a good while, but I calmed her down with fresh cookies and a rom-com. She might be a sassy and tough girl, but she is a girl nonetheless. We were having a good time, and it felt like the old days for a while. Then we heard the knock at the door. I asked Lucy to behave herself, but I knew that was asking for too much. In fairness, the people were pretty rude first. Even as I drove, the events replayed behind my eyes like a bad movie. I answered the door and was as polite as possible. As usual, the renters were surprised by my age and asked if my parents were home. I explained that my parents had passed away and that Cece was renting the house. They looked a little put off, but it didn't take long for me to realize that they weren't uncomfortable because Cece had put them in a bad situation, or because they had unintentionally brought up a painful subject. No, they were put off because I had the audacity to tell them the truth rather than a polite lie. Almost right away, the woman, who was the stereotypical suburbanite, keeping up with the Joneses type, ushered her kids in. Her husband lingered with her, and she began to tell me how inappropriate and uncomfortable the situation was. She even asked if I could leave my own house, and whether or not Cece had mentioned the dates I would need to be gone. Before I could state my case, Lucy came running from the front room. She immediately began yelling, telling them it was their fault for booking a miner's house without permission. If I made the woman uncomfortable, it was nothing compared to hot-headed, loud-mouthed Lucy. Her hands on her hips, her head cocking from side to side as if she were ready to throw blows, she gave the woman a pretty informal dress down. Of course, that type would never admit she was wrong. Rather than apologize, she huffed. Red-faced and livid, she called her children back to her, grabbed her husband by the arm, and screeched at us that she would be leaving a 1-star review. As Lucy rehashed yesterday's events, and they replayed in my mind, I couldn't help but giggle a little. I had always dreamed of having it with one of the guests like that. I'm not spineless, just maybe a little too polite and well-mannered for my own good. I should have punched her in her stupid face. Lucy always wanted to go toward violence, even though I had never witnessed her fight anyone. Mind you, I'd heard plenty of stories of her extracurricular activities in that department. I just hadn't seen them firsthand. Checking my rearview more out of habit than need, I saw the big mutt I'd just bought. He seemed to be actually listening to our conversation. "You okay?" Ever observant, of course, she noticed the way I was staring at my new ward. "Yeah," I said. I meant it too. I'd never met a dog this smart before, but I did want a dog that would be easy to train. If he were actually this smart, there's no way he'd be hard to teach. And the fact that he hadn't whined or caused any sort of fuss, even on this long ride, boded well for me. I knew we were in trouble when we pulled onto my street. In my neighborhood, the houses are spaced out pretty far. Nothing crazy. I can still see my neighbors, but each house sits on at least 5 acres. That means the black SUV parked on the road in front of my home couldn't be for anyone but me, and I only knew one person who drove a black SUV. Cece. I breathed the name, and I thought I heard the dog growl from the back. What's that witch doing here? Lucy was immediately on edge. I wasn't afraid of Cece. I was just really done with her nonsense. She rarely came down to visit me, but when she did, it was always to cause some trouble. Deciding I would try a peaceful approach, I drove into the driveway as usual and parked. I took my time, stressing to Lucy that I really did not want trouble today. I don't want the doggo to think I'm crazy or learn to attack people or something. Please, I need you to be civil, even if it means being quiet. We locked eyes, and I could tell Lucy was warring with herself. Fine. She ground out. I smiled. Thank you. As I unbuckled my seatbelt, a thought struck me. Hey! I looked from her to the dog. Do you think you could get him in his harness and leash? If things look like they're going sideways, bring him over to me. I didn't like the smile that flashed across Lucy's face, but I was out of time. Cece was out of her SUV and walking toward us. I quickly turned on the recording app I had on my phone. Then, not wanting her anywhere near my house or my car, I hopped out and met her halfway up the walkway. Jane, I see your car is working. I was shocked she said it so plainly, and couldn't help but wonder if this were her finally admitting to the weeks of torture she'd put me through. Still, I decided to play dumb. If I could actually get her to admit it on the recording, my lawyer might be able to get her some jail time, or at least help me get a restraining order. Well, yeah, why wouldn't it be? I tried to play innocent, but the sharky, icy grin she gave me told me it wouldn't be easy to get a confession from her. However, the conversation veered in an unexpected direction when she said, Well, given the trouble my guests had yesterday, I thought maybe it wasn't working. Her eyes, always unaffected by the pasted-on smile she gave me, glittered with malice. Would it have really been so terrible to leave for the weekend? Don't you have those hoodlum friends of yours you could have gone to? I was shocked. I knew she hated me and my friends and wanted my house, but she was bold and presumptuous. Lucy's words echoed in my head, and I was tempted to act on them. If anyone deserved a punch to the face, it was Cece. A low growl came from behind me. I turned around and was shocked to see the dog, harness, and leash on, but Lucy nowhere in sight. I quickly found her looking just as surprised as I, standing at the back of my car. Cece took a step back, a look of disgust on her face. What is that thing? The dog came and sat down right in front of my feet. He let out another low growl, but made no move to attack her. I was a little surprised by Cece's reaction. She was always dipping in and out of charities, many of them related to animals. I even recalled seeing a framed magazine cover of Cece, her face buried in the curly locks of a poodle. This is my dog, I said, trying not to enjoy the look of fear on her face. Someone slashed my tires again a couple of days ago, so I wanted extra protection. The angry look on her face soured. She scowled, and her skin seemed to loosen. She was normally put together and took care to make herself look pretty. But now she looked a bit like ice cream left in the sun. You have to get rid of that beast. I can't get anyone to stay here with that mutt. I barely get takers with you. She spat out that last word as if I were the most disgusting thing she could possibly mention. Baring his teeth, my dog growled again. As worried as I was that he might be aggressive, I was actually really glad that I picked him. There's no way that Cece would have been this scared of a cute, fat little puppy. Face contorted with disgust and anger, Cece turned on her heel and returned to her SUV. In total trepidation, I watched her fire up her car, roll down the window, and yell, "You better get rid of that dog!" She peeled out and left me standing there, watching her disappear down the road. Well, that was interesting. I guess I was wrong about Big Guy, huh? Lucy gave the dog an affectionate scratch behind his ear. Though he accepted it, he remained relatively unchanged. He was still watching after Cece, too. Come on, she pulled on my elbow. Let's go inside already. We got the dog, now we get to hang out. Lucy could have a one-track mind sometimes. But she wasn't fooling me. It was clear that she wanted to get my mind off my wicked stepgranny. I wasn't sure what to expect when I took my dog inside. He seemed bright, but also looked wild, like he'd never seen the inside of a house. The man I'd bought him from had said he was still intact, which might lead to more hiking. Thinking on this, I looked over at my giant rover. He was looking around the foyer with a rather unimpressed expression. I patted my leg and called him further into the house. He followed readily enough and seemed to take in the large front room impassively. Without further invitation, he walked straight to the couch and hopped up. But he didn't curl up and get comfy like I remember Tailbert doing. Rather, he sat down and stared around. It was kinda weird to see a dog acting so stoic. I realized Lucy was standing beside me, watching my weird dog take in his new home. "You sure know how to pick him," she said, nudging me. At least he scared Cece away. I felt oddly defensive, even though I knew she was just being silly. There was something special about my big, strange pooch. I just didn't know what it was yet. If I'm being honest, I was a little disappointed. I had built up the moment in my head before I even met the dog. I had planned to lead my sweet little puppy throughout the house, introduce them to the idea of chilling on the couch, give them little treats, and play with them in the backyard. But this little puppy wasn't so little and wasn't much of a puppy. He seemed pretty accustomed to life indoors, and I felt he might just run away if I let him in the backyard. Still, I went and sat by him on the couch. "Want to watch something, boy?" I clicked the TV on and started looking through movies. When I scrolled by a popular movie about werewolves, Lucy stopped me. "That one." I looked at her, surprised and skeptical. While we watched rom-coms when we were feeling blue, Lucy wasn't exactly a pop culture kind of girl. "Are you serious? Really?" But Lucy was adamant. Grinning ear to ear, she looked from me to the giant pooch beside me and back to the screen. "Come on, there's no way we're not watching a werewolf movie. Look at that beast." She ruffled my dog's fur. He looked annoyed somehow, but I had to admit it seemed like a fun idea. "Does that sound good to you?" I ruffled his fur too. He gave me a look that said it did not sound good to him, but hey, he's a dog, right? I figured watching a movie might allow him to calm down. Plus, it would acclimate him to the idea of sights, sounds, and people. At least, that's what I hoped. A few hours later, I was making dinner while Lucy channel surfed. I still hadn't thought of a name for the big guy, but the moment I got up from the couch, he was on my heels. I felt a couple of times of naming him Shadow because he was dark and seemingly stuck with me. But I thought it was cliché. "You're pretty curious, aren't you?" I opened the fridge and his interest piqued. "Or are you just hungry?" Even though he was kind of a standoffish sort, I was beginning to enjoy his company. I pulled out a package of prosciutto. I could see little strings of drool forming around his mouth, but he quickly licked them away. He edged closer, and I had no doubt what he wanted. I expected him to stop and sit down, but he kept coming. For a split second, I was a little afraid that he might attack me or something, but I immediately felt guilty. I got nothing but good vibes from my big puppy. "Do you know tricks?" I held up a piece of the thinly sliced meat. "Sit." The way his eyebrows rose made me laugh. It was like he was offended that I would ask him to do something for a treat. Still, he sat down, even if it was just for a second. "Up?" I held it up higher. Again, that sassy sort of look. Rather than standing on his hind legs, he sat with his front paws up in front of him. I was impressed with his spatial consideration. "Shake?" I held my hand out. For a moment, I almost thought this dog sighed exasperation. But I knew dogs didn't do that. They don't, right? Looking very annoyed, he held out his paw. I took it and shook it. "Good boy." I rolled the slice in my hand and held it out for him. I remembered being able to feed Tailbert out of my hands, and hoped to do the same this time. I just hoped I wasn't pressing him too much on our first day. He looked from my face to my hand, as if to say, "Really?" But obliged. I was pleased with how gentle and careful he was when taking the food. He looked up at me, and I couldn't help but smile. He gave me a quick wag of his tail, then looked at the package of prosciutto on the counter. Laughing, I tossed him a couple of more pieces. I wasn't sure what to cook, truly. I just knew that Lucy and I were pretty hungry. I guess my inquisitive Shadow was too. "Ah." I looked at him. "You're a sleuth, huh?" quiet and curious. How about that? Not Shadow, but Sleuth? I gave him plenty of pets. Reluctantly, he gave my hand a quick lick. I took it as a sign of his approval. You're gonna wash your hands before you cook, right? Apparently, Lucy had wandered in while I was playing with Sleuth. Duh, I answered childishly. I started washing my hands right away. We ended up going through the fridge together and making club sandwiches. Thankfully, I had picked up some tomato bisque while shopping the other day. It was perfect with just about any sandwich, in my opinion. I also ended up pouring Sleuth a bowl of kibble. He didn't seem particularly interested, but did eventually gobble it up. The rest of the afternoon went by uneventfully. We watched a couple of movies, gossiped, and got to know Sleuth a bit better. Well, as much as we could anyway. Almost too soon, Mrs. Juarez was outside. Normally, she would have called or honked, but today she came straight to the door and knocked. I wasn't surprised. She made no secret about her love of dogs. No doubt she had hoped to meet a cute little puppy. Oh, hello, Nina. She pinched my cheeks, something I had grown to find endearing. Where's the Perita, huh? She practically pushed past me in her excitement to meet said Perita. I couldn't help but stifle a laugh. If she thought I had gotten some cute little girl dog, she was wrong on every front. Well, maybe not every front. Sleuth was pretty adorable. As she entered the living room, I heard her scream. Whether with fright or delight was up for debate. Ma, chill. Sleuth is cool. To Mrs. Juarez did not look chill. As I walked in, I saw that she had her hand over her heart. She immediately started speaking rapid-fire Spanish. I didn't know most of what she said, but I understood enough to get the idea. She was asking where the cute little puppy was and why this big giant monster was on the couch. Ma! Lucy immediately started speaking just as quickly as her mother. I wasn't sure why Lucy was getting so heated, given she had been just as against Sleuth initially. Just as suddenly as the whirlwind had started, it stopped. Mrs. Juarez turned to me and gave me a big hug. It was so good to see you. I will take Lucy home now. She returned to the front door without another word. Lucy hung back, looking annoyed. She gave me a big hug, and I hugged her back. Ignore her, Jane. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I laughed. I also didn't know what she was talking about, given that I could barely speak the language. I'm sure she means well. In fact, I knew she meant well. Mrs. J had always been like an aunt of sorts to me. She was there for every party, always treated me like one of her kids when I came over. And when my parents died, she came over for the first week or so every single day to bring food and check on me. Once Lucy left, it was just me and Sleuth. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't lonely to see my friend go. Sleuth and I had quite a bit of bonding to do, but the fact that he was here was a massive comfort to me. I sat down beside him. What do you think so far, boy, huh? Do you like it here? Sleuth looked at me and seemed to consider my words. He looked from me to the TV, to the door that led to the kitchen. He did it a couple of times until I laughed. Oh, you like me? Do you like watching TV too? I'm not surprised you like the kitchen. I know this will sound crazy, but Sleuth nodded. Patting his head, I told him he was a good boy. I eventually showed him around the house and the backyard. I explained each area we went to, and he seemed to understand. I wasn't sure what to make of my quiet and clever dog, but I did enjoy his presence. When it came time for dinner, I had the perfect idea: steaks and potatoes. I made myself a medium-rare steak with a baked potato topped with butter, salt, sour cream, chives, and crumbled bacon. I added crisp asparagus with sea salt for a fresh and healthy pop. For Sleuth, I prepared a blue steak with bacon strips. He might not be able to speak, but his expression spoke volumes. I said grace, which he waded through patiently, then served us our plates. Bon appetit. The Sleuth grumbled something that sounded strangely close to thanks. I decided right then and there that, between his fluffy fur and his deep understanding of communication, he was probably part husky. Eat up, boy. Tomorrow I'm giving you a bath. And Monday, we go to the vet. That first night with Sleuth wasn't what I had pictured. I had expected to take a cuddly puppy to bed with me. Instead, when I led Sleuth into my room, he insisted on facing my door rather than looking at me. And when I crawled into bed, he refused to join me. I wasn't too worried, as I figured he would probably have to get used to me first. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ever since I mentioned the vet, Sleuth had been pretty down. He was already pretty standoffish, but after my little comment, he seemed downright depressed. I hoped he wasn't sick. The guy I got him from said that he was pretty sure Sleuth was too old for parvo, but didn't know if or when he'd been vaccinated. "You feel free to come up here if you want, okay?" Sleuth didn't look at me. He just flicked his ears in annoyance. I'm not sure what made me do it. Maybe it's because I really believed he could understand me. Perhaps it's because I kept getting this weird feeling that I understood him just a little too. "You're the only family I have now. Well, other than Cece, and you saw what she's like. I hope we can be friends." At this, Sleuth turned his head and looked at me. His strange silver eyes seemed to hold some understanding as I had answered a question he couldn't ask. I thought of how silly and pathetic it was to confess to my dog that I was an orphan. But there I was doing it. I told him how my parents had died in a collision and how nothing had been done about it. I told him about Cece and her evil attempts to either steal from me or bully me into giving her everything. I even told him about how I struggled to do simple things like clean out the garage. All the while I talked, I cried. The more I cried, the closer Sleuth got to me. Eventually, he got on the bed and even rested his head on my lap. "That's where you come in, big guy. You're going to keep me safe and keep me company." I wiped my face with the tissues I kept next to my bed. Sleuth became very serious. He seemed to be studying me. Maybe this was something all dogs did. He was appraising me, and I couldn't help but wonder if he was just trying to figure me out or deciding if he wanted to be my dog. A little disjointed, as if he wasn't used to the action, he leaned toward me and began licking my face like a puppy. I couldn't help but laugh. "Just me and you. Well, and my friends." Sleuth gave a wag of his tail and curled up beside me. I thought it would take a while to sleep that night. It usually did when I had a grief night. But there was something so comforting about having the weight of Sleuth next to me that I drifted off to sleep in no time. The next couple of weeks were pretty much a blur. Cece had been suspiciously quiet since Sleuth showed up. I didn't have anyone come to my house, nor slash my tires. It was almost like life had gone back to normal. I never did get around to taking Sleuth to the vet. It was strange, but every time I sat down to make an appointment for him, I would space out. I would suddenly remember a million other things I needed to take care of, and before I knew it, I would tell myself that I'd deal with it the next day. With midterms on us, I decided to have Sarah, Paul, and Lucy over. It probably seems strange for the rich kid and small-time trust fund baby to have such a small friend group, but these people were solid. When I was younger, everyone wanted to attend my birthday parties because my parents always ensured they were great. But over the years, I noticed more and more people came. Fewer and fewer gave me gifts or even wished me a happy birthday. I hope that doesn't come off as petty, but it was like they were coming for an event, not for me. Obviously, I talked to my parents about this, and they started scaling my guests down. It was nice. It really helped tell the genuine from the users. My little friend group was the only people who truly seemed to like me for me. So while I might not have the biggest bunch of friends, I do have the bestest bunch. "We have guests coming tonight," I warned Sleuth. He refused to look at me, a sure sign of annoyance. Even as I thought it, he began to flick his ears. "Don't be like that. You already know Lucy, and you'll love Paul and Sarah." I must have been going crazy, because it seemed like he was especially annoyed by the mere mention of Paul. He didn't know the guy, so why was he so annoyed? At first I thought it was odd, but then I thought about what life must have been like for him before he came to me. Obviously, he'd been trained, and so must have had an owner before. Maybe his owner was Paul? Or maybe his owner had beef with someone named Paul? Whatever, be like that then. I ruffled his fur and then got ready for school. Every class was pretty much the same. Non-stop talk about midterms, how to prepare, what to learn, study tips, practice papers, the whole 9 yards. Even lunch seemed to be dedicated to the looming tests. Rather than talking and joking around, my friends pored over documents between bites. "Are we still coming over after school?" Paul looked up at me hopefully. He was a great guy, cute, kind, funny, and not afraid to back down in a rough situation. but he was a terrible student. He was lucky to score a C on any test and relied heavily on our study sessions. Of course, I said, unsure why he would think I might suddenly back out. Do we need to reschedule? Sarah shot him an annoyed glance. No, we don't need to reschedule. I can't. Even Lucy seemed annoyed, which wasn't like her at all. She was a tough girl who didn't seem to care if she passed one way or the other, but her brain was like a super sponge. It soaked in all the information, no matter how much she talked. She'd never gotten less than a B in all the years I'd known her. Clucking her tongue, she looked between me and Paul. For a moment, I began to worry. Was this some intervention? Was Paul going to ask me out? I loved Paul, but not like that. He was like the brother I never knew I wanted. We were way too similar to work out in any romantic way. Just tell her already. Lucy continued to glare at Paul. Sheepishly, Paul looked up at me. My heart began to pound. I wasn't ready for any sort of romance, especially not the kind that could ruin my happy little group. I clammed up, praying that he wouldn't say what I was afraid he'd say. It's just, I'm kind of afraid of your dog. I couldn't help the fountain of laughter that escaped my lips. People turned to look at the commotion. Some scowled, angry that I dared to interrupt their extra study time. Others just looked curious or confused, as if it were suddenly strange to be happy just because exams were almost here. Finally getting my laughter under control, I looked at Paul. Scared of Sleuth? Why? He's a sweetheart. Paul shook his head. A sweetheart that looks big enough to eat me in just a few bites. This was a new side of Paul. I knew he didn't really care for animals in general, but I had no idea he was actually afraid of them. I can ask him not to come into the front room while we study. I offered, but this just earned me strange looks from all sides. What do you mean, ask him? Lucy's brow furrowed. He's a dog. Seriously, Jane, Sarah said, giving me a look that told me she was worried. Maybe we should hang out more often. No way. Well, yes. I would love to hang out, but you guys are being silly. I told you how smart he is. He does understand me. Lucy was the only one taking me seriously on the matter. Sighing, I asked him just to take me at my word that everything would be all right. The ride home was much more fun. With a car full of friends and a doggo who loved me waiting on my return, it was hard to be too sad. Even the study session wouldn't be able to get me down. When I got home, I went outside with Sleuth and asked my friends to get set up in the front room. Paul no doubt only got a glimpse of black fluff before Sleuth was out the door, but he still looked downright chilled. Things calmed down once I ordered delivery. I even put in a special order for Sleuth. No reason he couldn't have a burger too. Since my friends insisted on paying me, I secretly ordered some dessert. We decided to get things started before the food arrived, and we'd been making decent progress, but it had only been about 45 minutes from when I placed the order to when Sleuth suddenly ran through the front room to sit in the foyer. I laughed, but Paul looked pale. Sure enough, there was a knock at the door. I collected our food, tipped the delivery guy, and patted Sleuth on the head. I said grace quickly as I passed the food around. I expected dessert to come a little later, since it was from another place. I unwrapped the double-decker burger I'd gotten for Sleuth and put it on a plate on the floor next to us. Here, boy, come get it. He came up and practically inhaled the burger. Lucy and I laughed, but Sarah scolded me. Don't you know it's dangerous to feed dogs human food? Things like onions and tomatoes are like poison to them. It's no good. Honestly, I hadn't known that, but I told her I had ordered it with cheese to be safe. She was still annoyed and pursed her lips. Dairy and wheat aren't part of a dog's natural diet. Seeing how Sarah was probably the most brilliant student at our high school. She was right, but it's not like I could undo it now. I just shrugged and told her I would keep that in mind next time. Paul barely touched his meal, and it seemed he couldn't keep his eyes off Sleuth. It made me feel bad. Paul had been one of my best friends for the last 4 years. I didn't want him to be uncomfortable at my house, or worse. What if he stopped coming by? And then, I felt a strange foreboding as I glanced at Sleuth. What was it about him that was making Paul so nervous? What will happen when Jane will learn that Sleuth isn't just a dog? Will she still want to be beside him, or will it be too late to run? To find out what happens next, Listen to I Adopted the Runaway Werewolf only on Pocket FM. Download the app now.